Hello there, welcome to People, Politics and Power. I am Imoni Amarire. The Nigerian National Assembly had in the past courted controversy over its failure to pass the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The Assembly had missed two important deadlines it set for itself. First, in December 2020 and then in the first quarter of 2021. Civil society groups had begun to raise alarm over the nation's electoral system, given its recent history. In fact, the groups went as far as protesting in front of the National Assembly. Part of their worry was the experience with the 8th National Assembly, which passed the bill 4 times, and for 4 times had it turned down by the president over several issues, including clerical errors and then closeness to the 2019 general elections, which ran contrary to the ECOWAS protocol on elections. With less than 2 years to the next general elections in Nigeria, it would appear that that concern wasn't unfounded. The joy of many was heightened when the National Assembly finally passed the Petroleum Industry Bill that had languished for almost 20 years and had almost become a wandering ghost in the halls and corridors of the National Assembly. That feeling of euphoria was, however, almost cut short, leading to a huge outcry when a document was leaked to the public carrying one key provision that didn't go down well with the discerning public and seemed as though the lawmakers were not acting in the best interest of the country. The controversial provision, Section 52, Subsection 2, seeks to prevent the Electoral Management Body, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, from transmitting election results electronically, a development that many interpreted as a scheme to keep the nation in the Stone Age and not take advantage of advancements in technology. The outcry from the public was loud, and it immediately forced the National Assembly to deny authorship of such a provision in the bill. It said the document in circulation was a forgery and not the correct piece the lawmakers had worked on and harmonized at their December 2020 retreat. But keen observers of the legislature took the denial with a pinch of salt. Their position was informed by the experience with the Petroleum Industry Bill, where some sections were allegedly smuggled in or changed at the last minute and passed without an opportunity by other lawmakers to interrogate the provisions. So on the program today, we shall take another look at the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2021 and how it is likely to impact Nigeria's electoral system and processes. I'll be joined in the discussion by 2 gentlemen. They are right here in the studio with me. First is Jude Feromi Adejuwon, who is the convener Raising New Voices. Thank you so much, Mr. Adejuwon, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Also joining us is Kenneth Eze, who is the Executive Director, Speak Out Africa Initiative. Thank you very much. These 2 gentlemen and these 2 bodies were part of the civil society coalition that, of course, has been very active in looking at the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2021 and raising their voices against what they describe as an attempt to truncate Nigeria's democratic process. But before we go into our discussion proper, we will be going to Kaduna to speak to one of the parents of the abducted students of the Bethel Baptist High School in Maraban Rido, Damishi in Kaduna State. Now, if you recall that it has become almost a norm in Nigeria now that almost every week or every other week, a school is raided by bandits and hundreds, scores of school children are abducted and taken away into the forest. And the latest, of course, has happened at the Baptist High School in Maraban Rido. And that, of course, this last one took place just a few days back, and over about 121 students of that school in Maraban Rido in Kaduna State were abducted by so-called bandits and gunmen, and these bandits are now demanding for foodstuff to feed these 121 students who have now been taken captive by these people. Now, to be sure, Maraban Rido, where this Baptist High School is located, is, I understand, about 15 minutes drive from Kaduna City itself. So close to the seat of power in Kaduna State. And this is making very many people uncomfortable. For several days now, they have remained unlocated, as it were. So we are going now to be speaking with one of the parents, Dangana Habu Boda, is a parent of one of the abducted students. He's joining us from Kaduna via the telephone. Thank you so much, Mr. Dangana, for finding time to join us. Now, what is the situation today?
Yes, the situation of today, things from today that we heard from them, we've not had anything from the kidnappers of the children again. And the school management has organized prayer and fasting for today. So the parents of the students and the sympathizer are meeting in the school premises today for prayer.
So you are meeting for prayers. The abductors, we understand, have made a demand that you should, or the parents of the children should supply them with foodstuff so that these children will not starve. What is the situation with that? They have asked for different kinds of foodstuff, rice, salt, oil, and all other kinds of foodstuff with which they will feed the children. Have you people responded to this?
No, we have not responded to their request.
Why not?
Yes, we are trying to see how we can put the things in place before we actually get to them.
Okay, Mr. Dangana, the Kaduna State Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Arua, did say that the state government had tipped off the school authority as far back as a month before the abduction took place. That was on June 5th, based on intelligence that the bandits were going to come to that school. But that the school authorities did not listen to the pleas of the government at that time. What exactly have you as parents found out was the situation? If the school authority was warned 1 full month ahead of time before this abduction, why did it happen?
Yeah, from my family, they only advise the school to be security conscious the rest of the incident that is happening in the state. And then the management of the school, we are trying to put the security issue, the security activities in the school within the period within the week that the incident took place.
But the commissioner says he specifically asked the school authorities to close down the school. Why was that advice not yielded?
Yes, actually, the school management, based on what we are telling us, that the Commissioner of Internal Security did not actually ask them to shut down the school. But he told them they are in the safer side compared to the other schools within that area. So they should try and make sure they have enough security in the school.
But obviously, the security that was provided by the school was not enough to deter the bandits from taking 121 students in one fell swoop. How do you feel as a parent?
Hello?
We appear to be having some network challenges with you, Mr. Dangana. All right, let's return to the studio here and back to our focus on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2021. One issue that has been in the news for so long. For me, there are quite a number of the provisions of the bill that we will need to be talking about here. And like I told you before, we are joined by Kenneth Eze and Jude Feromi Adejuwon. Gentlemen, thank you so much. First, Mr. Adejuwon.
Yes, sir.
Let's begin. What is it that you find objectionable in the amendment bill?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this show. The spirit of the bill, of the draft that we now see, that we have now seen, I find it objectionable. You would recall that previously, the National Assembly had organized a joint public hearing. Like the matter was important enough for the House and the Senate to set up a joint committee on this issue and listen to Nigerians on what needs to be done. By the time we have this draft bill, it is completely against what I saw, what I experienced at the public hearing in December last year. The electronic transmission of results, one of the primary and the most important requests that Nigerians made to the National Assembly on this issue was removed. In fact, it was not just, it was a situation whereby it was prohibited. You know, there's a difference between having the act not talk at all about this provision of how we want to conduct our elections using electronic voting, right? But it was explicitly prohibited in Section 50, subsection 2, that is now very, very popular, right? But beyond that, you see that the provisions and for the recommendations that we should have a cap to how much nomination fees political parties can charge candidates, especially young people and women who probably don't have 20 million naira to pay for a nomination fee for a political party. That was entirely expunged out of the document. You have another situation where the Electoral Commission, right, will no longer be able to review a result that was declared under duress, which was in the agreement that we had in the public hearing. You go on and on to campaign finance and how you now have the permission of the law to spend up to 15 billion if you want to run for the president of the country, up to 1 billion if you're running for Senate, $500 million naira if you're running for the House of Representatives, right? So you see that this same National Assembly, that this same administration rather, that passed the Not Too Young to Run bill and came out saying we want young people to participate in our political process. Now I have a situation where it's like removing one barrier and setting up even higher barriers for young people to participate, for people living with disabilities to participate, for women to participate. And so, I mean, we can go on and on. There was a clause I was reading this morning about people who care about the role of the military in our elections. Section 27, subsection 2, I think, of this draft that we're now seeing gives INEC the discretion, right, to invite the military into the electoral process. So what we figured out, or what we saw in Rivers State elections,
as part of a larger security system.
As part of a larger security framework, right? So you see a number of all these inclusions that Nigerians were surprised. I personally was surprised about how the draft bill is almost completely different from what we had, or what we thought the Joint Committee of the National Assembly, after their retreat, agreed to do. So what do I find objectionable? I think that the spirit of putting out this draft in terms of what the law should do, or what's the objective of passing, we call it an Electoral Reform Act. That's what the campaign is about, to reform our electoral process. What we have with this bill is to cement the flaws of our electoral process. That's what I find objectionable.
Mr. Eze, what is it in the bill that, I mean, on face value, that you do not like? Before we go into the details, the nitty-gritty of some
to
add to what apart from section
the sections
52 subsection 2,
okay,
which is the big one that everybody is talking about.
Yes.
Are there other
sections
of the bill?
Of course there are.
Okay.
We have first of all, what is in it, to add to what my brother said, that we don't find, and Nigerians don't find, or we find objectionable, are the fact that there is a ploy to subvert the interest, the will, and the voices of the Nigerian people. Now, the Senate and the political class must understand that while we recognize their constitutionality to make laws, to work on drafts and rework, they must know that sovereignty relies on the people. This must be defined clearly. Because it is when they understand this, they will understand that they are there because the people choose that they have to go and represent them. So the fact that the will of the people is covertly, secretly, want to be thwarted is in its entirety condemnable. If there was a need for that, another public hearing, another meeting should have been held to call Nigerian people, to call stakeholders. It's not just civil society. The political parties were involved. Today, they were sidelined. Nobody. And let me use the opportunity to appreciate the stakeholders, the people that leaked this forged bill. Because Nigeria would have received the shock of their life. Of course, I know Nigeria would have resisted, but it will have dragged us back.
Is it really a forged bill, or that
it's a doctored bill,
or that the committee did not take on board the suggestions that were made at the public hearings?
It's a doctored,
because you know that it's not everything that is said at public hearings that eventually end up in a bill.
Yes.
But most of the issues, or some of the issues that were raised at the public hearings and that seem to have been agreed on, were not taken on board in the final copy of the bill.
Okay, in fact, now, it's a doctored bill, and we have our reason why we said that. And when you listen to the Speaker of the House of Rep, Right Honorable Femi Gbadabiamila, when he denied that they have no part, they are not aware of that, and what they know is the bill that they have, that the committee, in fact, the committee member stated clearly that the bill they've worked on. I watched a show on channel where the Senate chairman on INEC was there, the member, Honorable Bob, was there, and they were, in fact, the moderator of the program was highlighting and listing out those sections. And so why Nigerians are saying it's doctored is this bill has passed beyond public hearing, first reading, second reading. And a lot of harmonization have taken place. Only for at the last minute. Because the bill we are talking about, we have been made to know that in no distant time, specifically by next week, we should be expecting the passage of this bill. Only for us to now see ploy by some set of people, which we are even calling, that beyond all this, there should be a separate investigation to iron and to fish out this enemy of the states that really want to put the National Assembly, because from the look of things, the National Assembly will need to redeem their image. They need to really say that they are on the part of the people. And thank God for the Speaker and leadership that have clearly told Nigerians. And that is why now, because election is the fulcrum of any democracy, and this is the only available, and for it to be effective is a process. The defect has, the loose end has to be tightened. And that is what necessitated the need for a new, fresh electoral bill in the first place. We are no longer comfortable with losing our core members who on the verge of discharging their civic duty, their patriotic duty to Nigerian. You see election conducted at the polling unit by the way of transmitting manually, carrying it from the polling unit to the local government. You see security agents losing their lives. You see core members, we all know in this country, losing their life. And that is why Nigerians say that we would, if we are not yet matured to the point of having electronic voting, which surprisingly, this 9 Senate
even accepted that while you can do electronic voting,
you cannot do
you are prohibited. Sir, what it means that I will give you a phone, but you are not going to browse with that phone. And so this keeps Nigeria worried that who is actually afraid of this bill. There are a lot of sections like section 65(1) that gives INEC. We saw what happened in Imo State, where publicly the returning officer stated it clearly that the result he declared was under duress at gunpoint. Now, the earlier provision that was there is that INEC should be given at least 7 days to review that declaration so that the INEC can come. But in this doctored smuggled that is about to be smuggled, if not for the good-spirited lawmakers, they now say, no, that declaration is final. So the implication is that I can leave you, allow you to do all manner of campaigns. What I will do is just to end up gang arranging and carrying the returning officer, and once the result is declared, I will ask you to go to the court. And so we have section 135 that is still there as we are talking. And that is saying that from the look of things, even the former president, the immediate past president, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, has been an advocate that the power to choose leaders should not be given to the courts, with respect to our court. Goodluck Jonathan has been on that. But as we talk now, section 135 is still saying that when election is or appeared to not have, comply with the procedures and the rules, that the highest thing you can do is to take it to the court, the tribunal, and what it means that after whatever the court declares is what it is. Where Nigerians in the public area are saying, in that case where it is clear that the people have been robbed of their mandate, there should be given INEC that discretionary power to review the election, that to call for a rerun. Now, when people see that that method is no longer functioning, there will not be this Gestapo style of finding any means to get in there.
Doesn't that a provision talking about section 135 that gives the power to the courts to review an election process and perhaps declare who wins? In your view, I mean, from your position, you want it given to INEC. Yes. Can it also not be abused?
Well, if you allow me, please, Section 135 specifically talks about substantial compliance. So it says that if the court sees that this election was not conducted according to the guidelines of the Electoral Commission, right, and it is clear that this election is not compliant, right, with the guidelines of the Electoral Commission, the Section 185 of this so-called bill now grants the courts the powers to determine if that non-compliance with the guidelines is substantial enough to affect the result of that election in that constituency, whether it's a state constituency or a local government, but or a federal constituency rather, right? And that then gives the courts the powers to decide and say, okay, well, somebody who came forth according to this particular number of polling units can then be declared governor, as we have in Imo State today, right? It gives the courts a lot of discretion. Meanwhile, what we should have... But
you are saying that discretion should be left to the
people.
To the people.
To the people. Not even the electoral. When it is clear that this election is not conducted according to the guidelines, according to what the laws say, then the best the courts should do is to ask the Electoral Commission to go back to the people who have the power, who entrust the power to the politicians.
Let me read what that provision says. Please. Yes, Section 135, subsection 1.
Yes.
An election shall not be liable to be invalidated by reason of non-compliance with the provisions of this bill if it appears to the election tribunal or court that the election was conducted substantially in accordance with the principles of this bill and that the non-compliance did not affect substantially the result of the election.
You see, the point there is a discretion. If it
of the courts.
Of the courts. Of the courts. Yes.
Not of the Electoral Commission.
Not of the Electoral Commission. It is if we give, and that's what Justice Rhodes Vivo, when he retired, right, made comments about, that's what my colleague here mentioned about President Jonathan, saying that our courts have too much power in deciding and saying, well, this particular person, even though it is clear to us that this election did not comply with the provisions of this bill and the guidelines, like it is in our discretion that this election should this person should be declared.
So from your perspective, who should that power lie with?
The people.
The Electoral Commission?
No, the people.
It cannot be the people. The people cannot on themselves decide, because the election is
let me explain
by
that.
The Electoral Commission.
Yes, I understand that. I mean, the people cannot have a
through
what the court should then do in that case, once there is proof. Once, I mean, if you read that bill, it says that this bill, an election will not be invited, even though it is non-compliant. Once the courts can register that this election is non-compliant with the provisions of the bill, then we should go back and have an election.
Should declare that a rerun
should be done.
That's
then the people then have the power.
So that the people, when we say the people, we are saying through INEC to have a rerun.
A rerun of the election, so that the election can be done in compliance with the bill. If we have a law, and the law can then be, there can be a conduct of a process not in accordance with the bill, then of what use is the law that we're doing? You understand the rationale now? And which, like I said, going back, because we have to reiterate these points, right? That the people ultimately have the power to decide who leads them. Because, I mean, we operate a democracy, and there's something such as the legitimacy of a government, right? In a democracy. That's why when a government is popular, you find out that it is easier for that kind of government to even deliver the dividends of democracy to the people.
Okay, let's look at other provisions in the
Absolutely.
Act. Yes, Izzy. Are there one or two provisions of the Act that you find good enough that should be there? For instance, let me take you to Section 3, Subsection 3 of the Act. And it talks about the provision or the creation, there shall be paid into, there shall be established for the Commission a fund to be known as the Independent National Electoral Commission Fund. In this bill referred to as the fund. Now, subsection 3 of that provision says, the election funds due to the Commission for any general elections are to be released to the Commission not later than 1 year before the next general elections.
We also have an issue with that. Now, if you wait, the previous that we had was that not later than 2 years, but can be done on instrumental. Now, the excess is that you will give INEC, you will save them from rush hour. You will give them ample time to be able to implant, to be able to fix, and be able to make sure that they are ready and test run. Now, when you are putting it so close to the time, and of course we know that this money we are talking about is still going to be approved by the same National Assembly. Now, the INEC will end up being the one that is going to suffer. Because what will happen is that they will not have the time. Now, how can you justify where we are talking about 2 years before the time? So that the INEC will have 2 years.
For procurement and all that you need.
Some procurement is going to take time. Some procurement needs some approval. Now, you are now shrinking the space to 1 year. On what ground? You want to put the INEC, yet tomorrow you'll be the first to come out and put the blame on the INEC. You know, INEC is being, their hands are being tight at this point. And so when we look at this, we are saying no. INEC should be given ample time. INEC should be given time for procurement, for implanting, for drawing plans, to be able to implement, to have this money to themselves. Now, we all knew what happened. Why this electoral bill was not signed during the last period. One of the major reasons cited by Mr. President was that the time was short. Amidst other reasons, like there were some minute mistakes.
Clerical errors. There were clerical errors. Yes.
Clerical errors. But the main reason cited was that the time was that even if you had signed it, INEC will not be able to effectively implement that. But today, we are having in the doctor document that from 2 years, instead of that 2 years, Nigerians, INEC should be given time, if possible, to even shift it to 3 years. So that they will have time to do everything. You now want to suffocate INEC, and you are bringing it to 1 year, where we start having issues of this, there's no fund, maybe that 1 year, you may even shrink it again to 8 months. And at the end of everything, we now have a flawed process. And we say, no, that election is a process. It's not on that day the election actually happens, even though we vote on that day. But the process should commence immediately you end the first cycle.
All right, Mr. Adejuwon, there's also the an issue on Section 62, subsection 2. Now, if you recall, after the last election, that's the 2019 elections,
Yes.
there were court processes,
Yes.
resort to tribunals and all of that. And there were arguments about whether or not INEC had an electronic register of results.
Votes, yes.
What was it called?
Yes. Server.
Server and
Yes.
all of that. But it appears that this bill tried to address that in Section 62, subsection 2, where it says the Commission shall compile, maintain, and update on a continuous basis a register of election results to be known as the National Electronic Register of Election Results, which shall be a distinct database or repository of polling unit by polling unit results, including collated election results of each election conducted by the Commission in the Federation, and the register of election results shall be kept in electronic format by the Commission at its national headquarters. Does this address that issue that came up in 2019?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I would agree with you, like you said, that the bill is not 100% a bad bill, as it were. And this clause, for example, addresses the issue of whether INEC actually has an electronic server or not. But, I mean, if we look at this thing much more carefully.
Is this electronic register the same thing as having a server?
Which is what the point I'm about to make, actually. Right? You see that the first question you asked me was that what do I find objection? I mean, I tell you, it's the spirit of the bill, right? Now, you have in Section 62, subsection 2, that says that you have to keep an electronic register of election results, right? Then, some 10 clauses or 12 clauses before that, in Section 50, subsection 2, you have a prohibition of electronic transmission of results, right? Which is, in technical terms, that seems contradictory, right? That we have electronic, so you have electronic voting, that INEC has the discretion to do that, but electronic transmission of results is prohibited, but INEC must also now keep those same electronic, those same results in electronic format and keep it as a national electronic register. So
it's a contradiction in terms.
It's a contradiction in terms. So, and one more thing I think is very important, and I hope to God that some of the honorable members of the House are listening to this. So section...
without meaning to interrupt you,
yes.
we invited quite a number of the members of that committee to this program, but they all declined to come. It's
a very, very tough time right now because Nigerians are putting pressure on them on this particular issue. But you see what I wanted to mention, sections 47, subsection 2. I hope I get that right. Goes ahead to talk about the process by which a polling unit officer or a collation officer rather must declare a result. I don't know if you can help me confirm if that's true.
Section 47 subsection 2 says to vote, the presiding officer shall use a smart card reader or any other technological device that may be prescribed by the Commission.
Oh, okay. That's for the accreditation process.
Yes.
So you see that we have an electronic accreditation process with the smart card reader. INEC has now been given powers by this same bill that they can have electronic voting, right? Then we go to electronic transmission of results, but that is prohibited by this bill that we're talking about. But in maybe further down the bill, maybe section 87 again, I'm talking about the process whereby a collation officer declares a result. The bill talks about how this process should emerge. A collation officer would confirm that the accreditation, the data from the accreditation of the voters in a polling unit, right, is also the same as data from the number of people who voted, so that you don't see this discrepancy that we always see that 10 people voted, but 7 people were accredited, right? Or maybe 1,000 people were the total number of votes, but you only have 300 people that are correct. You have this overvoting process, right? So,
in fact, section 47, subsection 2,
okay,
makes the use of card readers mandatory.
Mandatory.
Because it says that to vote, the presiding officer shall use a smart card reader or any other technological device that may be prescribed by the Commission for the accreditation of voters to verify, confirm, or authenticate the particulars of the intending voter in the manner prescribed by the Commission.
Yes.
Then subsection 3 says, where a smart card reader or any other technological device deployed for the accreditation of voters fails to function,
yes,
in any unit, and a fresh card reader or technological device is not deployed, the election in that unit shall be cancelled, and another election shall be scheduled within 24 hours if the Commission is satisfied that the result of the election in that polling unit will substantially affect the final result of the whole election and declaration of a winner in the constituency concerned.
Yeah.
So it makes the card reader
mandatory,
or any other technological device mandatory.
Yeah. So what we should
so there cannot be a result to a manual check on the register of voters.
And but I mean, you see that the sorry, Kenneth. Okay. You see that the approach by prohibiting electronic transmission of results is is contradictory to what we have. So what we should have going forward is also that we should have a process whereby the law clearly states, as it has stated in section 47, subsection 3, that when a collation officer is to declare a result, right, that collation officer should go back to the accreditation data, should also now go back to the electronically transmitted results from each of the polling units to confirm that in polling unit 1, 7 people voted. In polling unit 2, because if we have electronic transmission of vote results, right, but we don't have that, the collation officer has to declare a result from a particular constituency based on that electronically transmitted result. You can have a loophole whereby the collation officer will resort to the manually transmitted electronic result, and then we still have the so-called rigging that we have at the collation point. That's another very, very important point that we have to make. Kenneth, you want to say something?
To add, this contradiction clearly highlights that this deliberate ploy by some key elements, some just set of people, and that is why they felt they can doctor that aspect. And so when you bring all this together, you can see that they don't add up. You allow me to do electronic voting, which we all know as of today that INEC said that they may not guarantee that electronic voting. Now, the one that INEC guaranteed, the electronic transmission of result that INEC has done and did it so well in Nasarawa, in Edo State, in Ondo State, you now come and you are placing a lane and prohibiting INEC. So what they will do is that they will now do electronic transmission and now begin to use manual to start write results. And so one will begin to ask, what do you think these people that are planning to doctor this have in mind? Because they know that once elections results are transmitted from the polling units, it is up game for some of them. The rising of votes that we do see will not be possible. We all know that the rigging of election does not happen most at times at the polling
unit.
It is when you finish counting at the polling, because the polling has everybody. You vote, you wait, they count it, they declare it. And once they declare 300 votes, when they transfer it to the local government, they add another 0 at local government during that process. Sometimes you start hearing that they're having delay. Sometimes in some waterline area, you see election spending almost 5 hours, 10 hours on transit. And by the time it's getting to local government collation center, and that 0 is added to 300, you have it 3,000. By the time they take it to the state capital, you are having 3 million. And so when you see, and the people at the polling units became surprised that this was 300 announced in our polling unit. We saw it. We all clapped. How come 300 has now yielded magically to 3 million? And so because that is why you saw that the doctored version is say yes, you are allowed to do electronic voting. But for transplanting the result, why? Because it is in the transmission that they perpetrate whatever
that the flaws
happen.
happen.
And that's why Nigerians are open to the truth.
All right.
That result must be transmitted electronically.
The section I was referring to is section 67, subsection 6.
Okay.
And I think you can go there. You will see that in that section, it is clearly and you know, this is a beautiful document, right? Clearly stated that this is how a collation officer should declare a result, or in the case of there is a dispute, you should the collation officer should have recourse to the smart card reader accreditation data, the original result from the polling unit. But when it gets to transmission of votes, it talks nothing about electronic transmission of results, right? Meanwhile, if at the polling units, after the elections have been conducted, right, the polling officer transmits that result electronically, you can be almost 100% sure that it is the correct result from each of the polling units that will be transmitted to the collation center. So when the collation officer is now about to declare that this is the winner of the results of the election, he has to, by virtue of this. So we're not just talking about section 50, subsection 2. We're not talking about the process of declaring who wins that election result, that election particularly, by saying that the collation officer has to recourse back to the transmission of the result that was done electronically, because that's when you know the true will of the people at the polling units all over the country.
All right, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll be talking about election expenses limitation, which Adejuwon made reference to earlier on. That's talking about section 88 of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. And of course, we'll also be talking about deregistration of political parties. Stay with us.
Of our dream. The Nigeria we need is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria, which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT.
Welcome back. Let's quickly take a look at section 79, subsection 6, which talks about deregistered political parties. And it says that where a political party is deregistered, no political association shall be permitted to use the name, the symbol, or acronym of the deregistered political party within 5 years of deregistration. What does that tell you? It tells you that if you, does it tell you that if your party is deregistered, you cannot come back to re-register that same political party within a period of 5 years? You know,
again, we talk about democracy, right? And the way that we should govern democratically our society, and you see that with basically this clause now, you are making a play really hard, the freedom of association. You are saying that people can feel free to associate, but they cannot associate in a particular manner, right? Politically, right? Now, the registration of political parties, if you ask my honest opinion, right, I believe that our constitutional backing for political parties in the country is in such a way that we don't have political parties that can thrive in the manner that political parties should be established, right? You have criteria in such a way that a political party has to be national, for example, and the Electoral Commission is now granted constitutional powers to register a political party that does not win elections in any part of the country. Now, you have a political party, or maybe you have 1 million people, which is a lot in this country, scattered across the 36 states of the country, and you cannot win an election. Therefore, your political party should not exist. Now, if you have now found a way to register a political party and have been deregistered, this law then says, this bill then says that you will not be able to register your organization in the not even just the name, but also the symbol of that organization. So, I mean, these are democratic tenets that should exist in any democratic country, that you should be able to build an organization. Maybe the way we use political parties, the word political party sounds, but you should be able to build a political organization that exists for political ends and is sustainable over years. You have a situation whereby in countries like Germany, the Green Party, for example, existed for years, almost decades, before they could win an election, basically because they had a message that resonated with the people over time. So you need political parties to be able to, it's like having a bill now. I mean, I'm sure you'll find it ridiculous that a law is passed in the National Assembly where the law says that if you open a bank in this country, you have to have 1 million customers in the next 5 years, otherwise your bank will be dissolved. Right? It is in the same manner, because I mean, it takes a bank to find time to find customers, find a value proposition, and so it takes political parties time. I was national youth leader of a political party, Core Party, right before he was registered in this last process, and you realize that the work that we were doing was work that was being exponential over time. In the next 10 years, you can imagine that this is what this political party will be like, will look like, right? But if you set up a political party now, no matter how good your views are, no matter how brilliant your manifesto are, no matter how well planned your community organizing is in the communities, if you don't win an election at the federal constituency or the state constituency, right, then you'll be registered. And once you're registered, in the next 5 years, you cannot have your political party anymore.
But you can come in another form.
You can, of course you can, but then you go through the bureaucracy of registering a political party in this country. I mean, you are a journalist, sir. I'm sure you would have seen very different times after the creation of the 74 political parties that they said INEC is now expecting 94 political parties to be registered. INEC is now expecting 100 political parties to be registered. And yet, not one of these political parties has been announced that they've been registered up to now. So you imagine that a political party, the INEC will come now and announce in February of 2022, which is next year, when elections is less than a year, and announce that these political parties have now been registered. And then by 2023 elections, you expect them to plan a national campaign, a nationwide campaign in 9 months or 10 months. And then when they don't win any election, right, irrespective of how well they have done or how many members they have, you deregister them and tell them to come back again through the process for under 5 years.
Kenneth, there are so many provisions of this bill that we'll be looking at, but we cannot exhaust all of them today. But let's quickly go to Section 88, which deals with election expenses, limitation of expenses of elections. That's very key, because now that provision, I mean that section of the bill has now raised the amount that each presidential candidate, each governor, each senator, each House of Representative candidate can now spend, much more than what it was previously. I think here that the maximum election expenses to be incurred by a candidate at the presidential election shall not exceed 15 billion.
Okay, thank you. Before, let me just add a little to what I share similar view on the party deregistration and not allowing them until after 5 years. He has cited a very wonderful example. I think we need to define our politics. He has just cited the Green Party in Germany. Now, if how we rate our political party is number of seats that they win, then we must tighten the loose end in our electoral system and process. And that is what necessitated this. Because as it is now, we cannot completely say that what we currently have is a true reflection of the will of the people. Because like we have cited, we've seen a situation where the returning officer has been put under gunpoint to make a declaration. And that person today occupies that position. Now, because I was unable to do that, and my party did not win the seat, we now deregistered. So we must define that it is not just by winning. We begin to see how do you, and that's why we are calling for the electronic transmission of results. Because if that is done, the people will have trust in the system. I can clearly say that, yes, of a truth, this is a true reflection of the will of the people. And when you even go to the sense of the registration, because if what drives our political party is ideology, you can't just cut short post somebody's ideology because some will take 10 years, like you said. Some will take up to 20 years to build.
Okay,
now coming to the political party expenses, it is very, very unacceptable that while the same government and administration went ahead to sign the Not Too Young to Run bill, and what is the essence? Trying to create a platform where the young people can come to the scene. On the other way around, they are now saying that politics in Nigeria is going to be all about money. And so it makes us to begin to think actually, and this money we are talking about, so many of them came into this power without having anything, and suddenly they become rich. And so it will not be wrong to say that most of them acquired this wealth in office.
And those who are in office actually fall back on public funds.
That is what we're saying.
To campaign.
And so now you want to now suffocate the young people who are still battling with the cost of the party nomination form, which was totally excluded. Because we were expecting this bill, the same bill, like it was raised during the public hearing, to raise concerns that political party should bring down their cost of forms, expression of it, so that the Nigerian youth who has what it takes, the capable ones, can be able to also come on a fair platform and vie for this position, and not just to be suffocated out of this. So when we are now seeing 15 billion from 1 billion, it is becoming clear that there is no room, there is no plan for the Nigerian youth. Because even if people are to raise 15 billion for you, you and I know that you are going to pay back that money. So you are going to be, the implication is that even if you are to raise 50 billion for me to assume an office, that money was raised, so I have to pay. So you are going to be on my neck, and that is going to make it that I'm going to award job. I'm going to, you are going to expect that such a public official to, you are going to, widen the gap, the corruption gap. And we are talking about fighting corruption. For the last 6-7 years, we have been talking about how to minimize, how to strengthen the system, how to fight corruption. So how can you now relate your fight against corruption with widening and making politics more appealing, more that, please, even if you are working in bank, in any company, please leave it, come. Politics is now what it should be. And so all these things is what we are saying, that it should, we're looking for reduction from 1 billion, not increment to 50 billion. The governor is now 5 billion. And you could imagine what he will do when he gets to that office. And so these things, when you accumulate it, that is why Nigerians are saying, no, this does not reflect the aspiration and the interest of Nigerians.
Quickly, Mr. Adejuwon, but we all know that even before this limitation now,
we know
that these candidates and these aspirants spend much more than...
Yes, and I thank you very much for pointing that out. I want to show you something. In section, I think 90 or so, when you go down after that clause, you see that there's also a bill that limits how much an individual can give to a campaign, right? They put that amount at 50 million. 50 million,
yes.
If I'm right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
so this is what, I go back to the first question you asked me again about what I find objectionable. I tell you the spirit of this bill, right? So it means
90 subsection 3.
Yes. It means that if I am running for president tomorrow, right, I need 300 people to give me 50 million naira each if I'm going to run for office. Right? And I mean, you can imagine how you want to crowdfund that kind of money, right? To get to 15 billion, if you want to stay within the law, right? And what that means is this: you are owing 300 people, right? Corrupt means, or whatever issue you want to return that money by the time you get into office. Now, the other alternative is this: that even if you're not going to get 300 people to give you 15 million naira, right, to run your campaign, it means that you already have to be a rich man, a stupendously rich person to campaign for office. That's one implication.
And this is from when you become a candidate.
When you become,
not before.
Not before. Not the expenses before the campaign expenses.
And all of that.
You know, so talking about the point, talking specifically to accountability. One of the recommendations that my organization, Raising New Voices, put forward was that once a candidate has been nominated, right? And unfortunately, the National Assembly did not consider this. And elections campaigns department, right, should be established within INEC, and every candidate, right, should register their campaign and their campaign finance documents with that department so that we can be able to monitor.
All right.
This same government was able to track who was donating money to HENSAS, right? So how come we are not able to track campaign finances of politicians? These are the issues.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, our time is up. I'm sure that we'll come back here to look at very many other provisions that are there.
Of the bill.
We'll be looking at For instance, the bill does not cure the problem of election petitions be dispensed with before swearing in. That is not catered for here. And there are many other ones about ballot snatching, ballot destruction,
electoral
election days and all of that. We'll come back and look at that at some other time. But for now, we must thank you immensely for joining us. Jude Feromi Adejuwon is the convener, Raising New Voices. Thank you so much. And Kenneth is the Executive Director, Speak Out Africa Initiative. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And for you, the viewer at home, thank you for investing your time with us. We will continue to interrogate the provisions of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2021, which seeks to repeal the Electoral Act number 6, 2010. We'll be doing it, as it were, provision by provision. My name is Imonia Marere. Bye for now.